Hey guys, Michael here. Hope that you're all doing great today. I want to do something a little bit different in this video, and that is, well, let me start out by first of all saying big thank you to Physically 3027, who says, I tried to play this mod with Ungrim, and the campaign was basically impossible. At war with greenskins to the north and south, and with limited movement range, all I could do was sit in my starting province. With the slower movement range, moving out would mean risking an invasion from multiple stacks from either faction. So I didn't like it, I had nothing to do. And of course, the mod in question is the Hecleas Grand Strategy mod, which I have been touting in most of my most recent videos. And obviously, if you don't care for the way the campaign plays out, that's perfectly fine. It may not be the right mod for you. It's certainly not going to be the right mod for everybody. But when I read this, well, let's just say challenge accepted. And so that's what this video is. In fact, I want to offer not just one, but two different ways to progress into this campaign. And I'm sure many of you can think of other ways to do it. So first things first, I want to show what I've chosen to do here. So I very much appreciate, by the way, when people make suggestions like this. I mean, it wasn't made as a suggestion for me to play a campaign, but I interpret it as that. So anyway, if anybody wants me to try out a particular campaign that you're struggling with or whatever, I'd be happy to oblige. So here we are. We're going to play Ungrim Iron Fist, of course. I'm obviously not going to show this entire campaign. In fact, I'm only going to play about 10 turns of it to show that it is certainly winnable. But anyway, as you can see, I've chosen to play here on campaign difficulty, legendary, battle difficulty, very hard. AI stats turned up all the way to their highest. And let's go ahead and jump in. Now, I'm not going to rehash all the ways that this Overhaul mod makes these campaigns more difficult. This is not an introductory video to the mod. I've made several of those recently, so if you're interested in it, then please check those out. All of them are on this channel within the last week or so. But anyway, so again, the main thing to keep in mind based on that comment and based on what we know about this Overhaul mod is the combination of the slower movement range, which is indeed a problem here in the mountains, as well as the reduced replenishment and quite frankly just all around extra difficulty. But as far as the beginning of this campaign goes, it pretty much starts out the way that you would normally expect an Ungrim campaign to play for basically about one turn. Go ahead and make peace with Ostermark, or not make peace, get a non-aggression pact with Ostermark just for the extra money, because you need every little bit of money that you can get in the beginnings of these campaigns with this Overhaul, and obviously Ostermark is not somebody that I ever expect to become an enemy with. Generally speaking, in these campaigns, I really like the buildings that give the combination of income and oath gold. Income is king, obviously, but ordinarily I also like to use the oath gold a lot. However, for this particular campaign, I'm going to do something a little bit different, which is you really need growth as the dwarves in the early going. So I'm going to go with that, and I'm going to hope that we get enough money from fighting battles and taking new settlements that I'm not going to need the income buildings right away. So this first battle, we go ahead and attack our starting enemy. Of course, another change that this mod makes is that it pulls the settlement garrison into the starting battle because of the increased reinforcement range, which makes a huge difference. In a lot of cases, not so much in this particular case. We win this battle even on auto-resolve fairly easily. Again, auto-resolve results are not shown for you using this mod, which is awesome. Really, really like that. I actually, having thought about it, wish that that was toggleable in the base game, but whatever, it's fine anyway. At least this mod does it. So we didn't know exactly what our results were going to be, but we didn't lose any units. We got a fairly useless magic item out of it. It's a blue, which would be nice, except that it's for the ranged units, and that's not going to do us any good here in the early campaign. Red Eye still has plenty of strength, even after losing that first battle to us, but Nashrak's Lair is still within our movement range on turn number 1, and it doesn't have any additional armies helping to defend it, just the remnants of that garrison that lost the battle that we just fought, so we can just easily roll right up, and this is a pretty easy, pretty obvious auto-resolve right here. Go ahead and conquer the settlement. So like I said, this is still pretty much what you would expect in vanilla. It's a little bit more difficult fighting that first battle just because of the garrison coming out to reinforce it, but overall, not that much different than it plays out in vanilla. But from here, things start to go quite a bit different. But the good news is we do have our first province here. And one thing I want to point out, I'll go ahead and allude to there. I mentioned that there's two different ways to go about this campaign successfully. One of them is, as dwarfs, this is one of the very few factions that you can play tall with. And there's certainly nothing wrong, particularly if you're using this Overhaul mod, nothing wrong with staying in your starting province, building the deep roads, building all the economic buildings first and within the deep roads, really build up your industrial strength. And then once you've just got unstoppable armies, then you can roll out and just start conquering territory hand over fist. Now, that's not what I'm going to do in this. I'm going to go ahead and expand here the conventional way. We're going to go ahead and recruit in a couple of Slayers because, of course, Ungrim Iron Fist, that's what you want to do. And then for good measure, I also go ahead and recruit a second Lord. You never really know if you're going to need him or not in these early battles, but it's nice to have the extra maneuverability of having two different lords to move around. Sometimes you can use one of them as bait and put the other one in ambush stance. I tried that several times in this campaign. Doesn't really work out, but he's at least a very good fighter, which will contribute to the upcoming battles. And so moving forward to turn number 2, we have our additional Slayers in our army. Obviously, nobody within attack range. I just go ahead and use the tunneling stance to jump as close to the border as possible, hoping that I would be able to reach to attack on turn number 3, to attack Ornery Backslider, that is, who is, the Lord for Red Eye. And with our secondary Lord here, since he remains in regular stance, we can go ahead and do some additional recruiting with him. Okay, so fast forward to turn number 3, we have Zufbar. Declare war on us, isn't that wonderful? A little bit of foreshadowing, that will make a difference coming up. Anyway, as we find out, unfortunately, we still cannot reach to attack Fallen King Mountain and Ordinary Backslider here on turn number 3. So it's going to, again, this is what the mod does. It slows down your movement. So yeah, this is just going to take a little bit longer than I had hoped. But you know what? You just got to adjust to it. The good news is we now have a pretty strong army with lots and lots of Slayers in it. Nothing that the Greenskins can throw at us right now is going to be enough to take on this army. And then wouldn't you know it, here on turn number 4, we have Draika declare war on us. So that is definitely not what we need. We're now in a little bit more of a pickle where we've got 3 different neighbors at war with us, and we've only got really one decent army. So we have to pick our battles here, but what I've chosen to do is to continue the fight against the Greenskins here to our south. As you can see, Ornery is running away. The good news is that when we attack the settlement, that because of the increased reinforcement range, it does pull Ornery Backslider's army into the battle as well. Now, I'm not sure. This might be a mistake, or I should say this might be a side effect of the mod kind of screwing up AI. I'm not sure if this is intentional or if this is just the fact that the AI can't really react to the additional reinforcement range, but for whatever reason, one or the other, Ornery gets pulled into this battle. I choose to go ahead and fight it manually. It wouldn't have been too big of a deal to go ahead and auto-resolve this. We would have won it fairly handily, but I was in the mood to fight a battle. I'm not going to show all the battle, of course. I'll just show a little bit of it. I do want to continue to get some practice in with the changes to the tactical AI in the battles, and this felt like a good one to do it, but really didn't turn out to be too much of a problem. One thing I learned is that the MCT option for allowing you to continue the battle after the end after the end battle button pops up, apparently by default now it does continue past the end battle. It looks like there's a number of seconds where it will allow the battle to progress after the end battle button pops up. However, it felt to me like I went over that limit, so I'm not exactly sure. I'm going to have to do some more testing with all that. Anyway, the important thing is we can now safely come in and occupy Fallen King Mountain, halfway to getting our second province. However, obviously the toughest test is going to be getting the last settlement, because Grom Peak is quite a few turns away from us with our reduced movement range, and that means that it's going to give the Red Eyes here lots of time to recruit in some new armies to stop us. So let's see whether or not we're going to be able to take it. What follows, starting here on, I'm picking up on turn 6, there's a few turns here of just slowly progressing through the mountain pass on our way to Grom Peak, and as I mentioned earlier, now we've got Zufbar to worry about, so here's Barundan Stoneheart with quite a strong army in our way as well. However, what he's going to do, very wise of him, he is going to eventually get out of our way. Pretty smart of him, quite frankly. I was a little bit concerned at this point that we might end up having to fight a battle against the combined forces of the Greenskins and Zufbar, but I'll show here in just a second. That does not end up happening. I should also mention that because I just could not spare an army to help defend our own capital, and because of Droika being up there threatening it, we haven't seen any armies of theirs just yet, but I didn't want to run the risk, so I went ahead and built a walls building up there to strengthen the garrison. With a size 18 garrison in Karakadrin, I'm not really too worried about Droika rolling up and taking it. They could, it's the Wood Elves can end up getting some pretty strong early game armies going, but anyway, it was the best I could do, and I feel pretty good with a size 18 garrison in a walled city for the dwarves. So getting back to the main point, all we can do really is be patient, keep pushing forward with our pretty good-sized army here, filled with Slayers and Slayer Pirates for the most part. I, at this point, can see that the Greenskins have 3 different armies plus the settlement garrison for Grom Peak. So this is going to be a pretty tough nut to crack, obviously, but the dwarves are very, very strong. In the early game, they definitely, unit for unit, have an advantage over the Greenskins, so I was mildly curious how we were going to do as we end up eventually having to fight 4 different armies, if you include the settlement garrison, with our measly 1 army plus an additional lord. Now, I also have to say that I was very worried that, like I said before, Zufbar was going to join in the battle. That would have been a bit of a disaster. But instead, Zufbar very wisely offers us peace. We had to pay, I think it was 46 gold to have a peace treaty with Zufbar. Totally worth it. Gives us the opportunity to attack the Greenskins without having to worry about what is really a very strong army of Zufbar's. Now, the Greenskins try to lay an ambush. It fails, but we still have those multiple armies to deal with. Conveniently, we do unlock the Forge here on turn 9, right before I'm about to launch an attack, and normally I wouldn't do this. I like saving up for 300 Oath Gold so that I can get some character runes, but in this case, every little bit is going to help in what is going to be a really very difficult battle coming up. So I do decide to go ahead and use 200 of the Oath Gold to make a suit of armor. Plus 35 armor, plus 5 melee defense. Not great, but Ungrim wasn't wearing any armor at all up to this point, so like I said, every little bit helps, and this is a really important battle that we cannot afford to lose. So I slap that bad boy onto Ungrim and get ready for the assault. So we've got Ungrim's 1 army, plus our additional lord, going up against all of this. 3 armies plus the settlement garrison. The settlement garrison is possibly the strongest of any of them. Now, I have to say, I feel pretty good about this battle. Fighting it manually probably is the way to go here, but I'm just going to show that you can auto-resolve it and win this battle. Again, you don't know, and boom, look at all of these casualties we take. I believe if I had decided to fight this manually, you're not really fighting all of those armies at the same time. They have to, bring a lot of those units in as reinforcements. We really could have outperformed the auto-resolve here, but just to show that you don't even have to, that you can just auto-resolve your way through a battle like that. There you go. It's ugly. It's a lot more casualties than what you would get in vanilla, but at this point, even though they've got quite a few survivors there, we now find ourselves in a situation where we can lay siege. And you may look at this and think, oh my goodness, you've only got 7 units plus the fact that only a few of them are at full strength. Most of them, like Ungrim himself, is totally, really badly wounded. So is the reinforcing lord. And both of our heroes, including Ungrim's son, have been wounded. So this is now, we're going to be fighting one more battle with our arm tied behind our back. Now, one thing that I have to point out, this is a flaw in the Overhaul mod, unfortunately, is here on the battle screen, it looks like you can click on the auto-resolve button, but when you do click on it, it doesn't work, and instead a second auto-resolve button pops up. That's because we don't have any units with Siege Attacker. It's a little bit clunky, but anyway, that's what's going on there. Now, of course, sometimes losses have a silver lining, and the fact that we lost so many units in that battle, we can turn that around and use that to our advantage, because now our income is going to allow us to recruit another lord and start recruiting some units into a third army, and the place to do that is up here at our capital, Karak-Kadrin, because of the aforementioned war with Droika. So, yeah, this is actually kind of working out okay, because normally, if you don't lose any units, you can't really afford to start recruiting in another army, and you would have Ungrim in better health, his army in better health, but way, way, way removed from this new front. So basically what we're able to do at this point is, get an army going up here on the Western Front to deal with the other main threat. So once we take Grom Peak, we'll actually be quite well situated to defend Karak-Kadrin should Droika decide to attack us, until we decide what exactly we're going to do with Ungrim. Now, over the intern, I'm a little curious whether or not the Greenskins are going to use their depleted armies, but they still have the numbers advantage over us, and attack us. And I'll be honest, it was a little dicey. I wasn't exactly sure what they were going to do and whether or not we could win if they did attack us. But they don't, because of course Greenskins are at heart total cowards. And so here we are with another battle between a bunch of highly depleted armies, this time having to take our tired, beleaguered dwarves who are still alive and throw them at the walls of Grom Peak in a last-ditch effort to take over this stronghold of the Greenskins before they get a chance to reconstitute their forces. And no problem, because we're dwarfs, we get a decisive victory. So there you go. We have wiped out now all of the Greenskins except for the tiny remnants of one little army that has no way of replenishing itself or recruiting any new units, because they no longer have any settlements. And we have just established our second province, and at the same time situated ourselves to where not only here on turn 10, not only do we have 2 full provinces that are pretty safe, because certainly this remaining army of the Greenskins is not going to be able to take Grom Peak from us. And we still have, a little bit of strength remaining in Ungrim Iron Fist's army. but now we also have our new army up there at our own capital with which to build upon to take the war to Draika should we decide to do that. Now, obviously, this campaign is very, very far from decided, and that's what I really like about this this overhaul mod. You are going to suffer setbacks like the massive casualties that we took in that battle against Grom Peak, but you just have to adapt to it, and it's those moments of having to adapt to the challenges that pop up. Those are things that don't really happen in vanilla very much, but they do happen more often in this particular mod, so it's what I like so much about it. So here we are in, like I said, we've got basically now the southern front taken care of, but we still have Crooked Moon to do with, so definitely, you know, Skarsnik is going to be a threat. I'm pretty sure I saw that he's at war with Thorgrim, but absolutely could very well end up at war with him as well. And then, of course, we still have Azhag to our north. So we're absolutely not out of the woods yet, but you know what? Turn 10, using this overhaul mod, if I've got 2 full provinces that are relatively secure by turn 10, particularly with a faction as strong as the dwarfs, I feel pretty good about this campaign. So that's that's my example of how even just basically using a lot of auto resolves, you can succeed with this campaign, at least in the early going. But then, like I said, you've also got the option with the dwarfs. If you want to play a more defensive campaign, you can go tall, you can build up your deep roads, and eventually those are so powerful that you can eventually have yourself a really strong faction to start expanding, once you've already got that power base built up. So anyway, I appreciate any feedback that you guys can leave. Like I said before, some of you may have already figured out better ways to go about this than I did. But again, that's kind of the fun of this overhaul. Kind of like when you first play a new legendary lord that you've never played before, even in vanilla, you get that first campaign and you're not exactly sure what to expect. And then in the process of playing it that first time, you make mistakes and you think of things that you could do better and whatever. Well, that's basically what every legendary lord is like when you use this overhaul mod, because it's just going to provide some fresh challenges. Campaigns are going to go completely differently than what you might be used to in vanilla. So anyway, like I said, please feel free to share your own thoughts. If anybody has any others that you're struggling with using this overhaul mod and you want me to take a look at it, I'd be glad to. If you feel like 10 turns wasn't enough to prove the point, then I can certainly continue this one on a little bit longer. But anyway, I'll go ahead and wrap this video up right here. I think it's going on long enough. So thanks everybody so much for watching and listening, and I will see you all in the next video.